What's up? What's up? What's up? Guess this can go on inner child or unfiltered inner child, or maybe I don't know. We'll see. Let's give gratitude. Um, Supposedly today's supposed to be, Mother's Day. I'm taking out time. I was with the kiddos earlier, but for me, I'm realizing, all mothers are significant as well, and also the significance of mothering yourself. Um, Mother's Day isn't just one day, but it hit different, just as a Father Day will hit different for other people. But I'm here to remind people, unfiltered inner child here is that no one's gonna coddle you on your healing journey when it comes to you really getting to know who you are on a deeper level, when it comes to getting to know your inner child. No one's gonna coddle you. You have to show up for the inner child. It's you. It's one thing I had to accept more and more. And I realized how much it was breaking so many cycles and so forth when it came to what I was trauma bonding with, wounded by a person or individual, and just the energy around realizing mothering myself was a real thing. And the codependency aspect of breaking that was the emotional abandonment. So I recognize this in a lot of different people, relationship-wise and so forth, where sometimes you're not just dealing with a physical abandonment wound. Sometimes you're dealing with an emotional, and that could be a little different when you're trying to navigate through life and get through things a little different. So it's like sometimes you can be dependent on that person to reciprocate, or how could I say this, like unknowingly escape through the fact of you're not knowing how to navigate, nourish yourself, navigate the emotion, basically have balance when it comes to emotions. And this is one thing I've learned even through my own undeveloped emotions, especially if you don't learn it young, is that it also is a part of you mothering yourself. When you didn't have a mother or significant matriarchal figure, and men too, because men have to mother themselves too. So a part of them is like that distortion in women and men, when they didn't have someone as such that empowered them and supported them through that, how to balance out those things when it comes to personal relationships, when it comes to business and partnership and so forth, then this would be a difficult thing to maintain as you progress in life. So that's one thing I had to learn with just the karmic lessons that I had to learn through also seeing myself, my inability to navigate the emotion or nurture myself through times where, let's say, I'll give you a demonstration or example. Like someone who is argumentative, right? I grew up in environments of people who were verbally abused and argumentative. So when you address something, it really highlights how someone, when conflict arises, how they emotionally respond to it rather than reacting and feeling like, they point the finger like it's everyone else but them. And again, that's a telltale sign of undeveloped emotions, possibly emotional abandonment, not knowing how to really maneuver through that anger and frustration. So they lash out, they attack. I was there. I was around it. And due to suppressing it and trying to repress it for so long, I realized this is causing a lot of conflict in my life. This is causing a lot of this is creating a lot of, not conflict, well, just not only just conflict, but it was creating a lot of blockages and hindering a lot of my growth. So I was like, okay, something's got to change here. It ain't so much of you get to a place where it's not so much of the person. You have to realize, like, it's you as well. It's you, when you really get to a place and you start realizing, like, dang, what was my upbringing? How did this affect me? Did my upbringing really, was my mother and father really, good parents? Not even just good. Did they guide me into knowing how it is to navigate things and really see it, and how this would, affect my business, my partnership, my friendships, and so forth, and plague my life? And so now the inner child aspect of that is realizing no one's going to coddle you through the fact of keep pointing out what you're doing, or they're going to say it, but those who know through emotional intelligence and emotional maturity, you're going to start becoming aware, like, hey, I've seen this signs too many times. And when one is not willing to take accountability for their own emotions, for their own actions, and so forth, growth comes in with walking away. Walking away, because if you're trying to expand, if you're trying to build something, that person can then become a liability, because through interactions, if it's not just happening with you, it eventually happens on a bigger scale, a different level of things. And I've noticed that just with myself, where if these uncomfortable emotions comes up and you don't know how to navigate it, sometimes you can take things a little overboard and too personal. That also can spill off into your interactions with, just anybody on so many levels. So again, the awareness around it is realizing, like, this is an inner thing. What's going on with me? What's really going on with me that I'm ignoring? And again, personally, I've seen this happen from the root cause of things, like with the mother wound. You have to accept, like, you know what? My mother's never going to change. My mother's never going to really see the importance of her not nurturing herself, her inner child, and so forth, that you don't think is important to have nurture your kids or teach them the importance of emotions, and they're naturally going to be dependent on you. Children are naturally going to be dependent on you, and for the father too, because we offer that. But that's the thing about a healthy balance, is realizing, like, hey, that goes back to emotional abandonment. That goes back to a part of where a lot of women and men didn't get a lot of things growing up, to where they're expecting their partner to be these very things in the emotional state. In a way, it kind of is like, in a way, it's like you, let me see, how could I say? I've seen something like this with my mom, and this is why it's so important about the inner child healing, where having a mother wound, I realized so much how, this thing I wanted to ignore called enmeshed relationships, and also, what's the other one? Emotional incest, where you have this dependency and you vicariously live out your wounds, or you're looking for, through your child, or you're looking for your child to coddle you or support you, or to be that anchor, or almost like that crutch when you have had failed relationships over and over. So this plays out through adulthood for a lot of people, because they keep wanting different parts of them to change, but they're not willing to do the inner work and hold space for their inner child. You see what I'm getting at here? When you're not willing to coddle the inner child and support and realize, like, it's your inner world that you need to pay more attention to, rather than focusing on whether you got to be in the next relationship, because that same fucking pattern gonna happen. And eventually, how you thought you began something that honeymoon aspect, the energy's still there that's unresolved, or the energy's still around the fact of you never really creating the space and holding the capacity. And I've had to do that even more and more when it comes to connections and relationships. And it's something that I learned to master when it comes to my emotions around certain situations, how I'm no longer reactive, how I just look at the fact of like, you know what, I cannot change this person. I've accepted what it is. I simply just surrender it all, because what can I do? There's something where you have to realize there's going to come upon a time where people are going to have to do the inner work in their free will. That's not your choice. You cannot make people heal. You cannot fix them and so forth. And then gradually I learned how, the distance becomes more and more prevalent, because shit just don't resonate with people no more. If I learn to hold space for myself in regards to not trying to fix other people, which reflects really an internal aspect of me running from a part of myself. So if I'm trying to fix this person's situation without really realizing like they're pulling me down, they're not really being supportive, because eventually that's going to show. They're going to want you to show up and hold more capacity for their emotions and their wounded inner child, to where it's going to pretty much spill over into a way of you forgetting about yourself, because they're going to sometimes even guilt trip you into believing like, well, you don't care about me, and so forth. I'm telling you, I went through that shit with my mom, bro. I used to see her play this out with my grandmother, like see it play out through the fact of like something happens and I can see the little girl who never evolved emotionally, who was still dependent on that emotional support that she didn't get from when she was younger. And I see it would play out through everybody, even including me, because a part of that was still enabling, her in such a way. All right, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna do some pull-ups right quick. One moment. Okay, I ain't want to overdo. I think I did 8 or 9. Shit, which is still great. Shit. You know what I'm saying? It's good to pull your body weight. And I had to hang there for a little bit. I was hanging. I felt that shit in my neck, my shoulders, and my... So continuing on. Do I still got my headphones on? Oh no, I'm gonna take this out of my ears. So continuing on, like I was saying, I just recognize like how much I've not even oversaturating the word mastering, but is the mother wound in me healing it allows me to see it, the inner child in a lot of women and a lot of people. It's just something you cannot just, it's like, what did Dick Gregory say that time? He said, when the universe gives you the glasses, you can't just take them shits out. Like, I cannot not see it, because guess what? It's a protection. It's a way of realizing, like, I cannot run from the fact of the things that I've come to know. And so with the knowingness, I apply it now. It's like a wisdom now to where, okay, you know this, you know better. And so that goes with growth, emotionally and so forth. That goes with growth. It's probably the best spot. Look at all this. Man, take yourself out there somewhere. I don't know, found me a tree. This is perfect. And it got a little sea area. This is perfect. Oh. But that way I can sit the phone up too. Let me see. Perfect. So yeah. I don't want to feel like I'm flashing y'all with my midsection moving around. Oh, this is perfect. Oh, I swear it be the simplest things. So again, appreciate you, Tree. Gratitude. It's wild because it's tourist season. It's like, the fuck, I gotta come here again. I didn't really pay attention to all of this room right here, like the land. It's so much to do. Like, this open space is so beautiful. But anywho, so yeah, you cannot overlook the fact of what you've been shown and what you navigated through, because it's like another, like if you playing a video game, it's like another not just tool, but another accessory to your collection of whatever it is, to like knowing that you have this code, this cheat code. You can call it a cheat code to life, to where it's like, okay, I know this is gonna prevent me. So what I'm saying is, like, what it does is that it keeps me from falling victim, not even victim, but falling prey to that which I know, no matter who it is, falling prey to the same energy or low vibration or whatever you want to call it, falling prey to the same pattern of something I've already made it out, made it out of and gotten through. Especially like recognizing it in people, because when you recognize it within yourself, when you realize like how much more I've had to make time to heal through my emotions and heal the inner child because of that emotional abandonment. Like I said, for me, it wasn't just physical abandonment when it came to my mom. It was both emotional and emotional and physical. My dad, it was a physical. Even though he said, he wanted to be a part of my life, that father wound is much different when it comes to approaching the inner child, because it's more of the assertiveness, like how you take that which from the root of the mother, and the matriarchal, and when you really like never had none of that shit, it's like I really had to take moments to give myself so much credit and gratitude, because of the fact of like having to coach myself through things, almost having to support myself. And then one thing about the emotional abandonment, it'll also show how, I'm gonna pause it because I don't want no flags from music. He jamming though, I ain't gonna lie. I love when he riding through on this shit. I thought that was a motorcycle. That's a the mobile wheelchairs or whatever you call them. It got rims, it got 4 wheels in it. You got a song playing and stuff. But what I was saying is, this abandonment wound can show up so much in other people, where how could I say, from my experience, I've noticed as I start to keep progressing and stay consistent, because I noticed this person, like, I just published my 12th book, right? And I encourage people to say, like, this isn't just the fact of it's bigger than the money itself, because I start to recognize, like, for one, delayed gratification, the longevity aspect, the learning the depths of the fact of me realizing, like, wow, this is going to be beyond when I'm not here anymore. My kids get to read it, other people get to read it, they get much, some insight on it and so forth. And then the bigger picture to it, well, other part of it is realizing how much I know personally what I had to navigate through to even create those books. The art, even the art around it, like creating the masterpieces, like on the cover. I know what I personally went through. And I also, through those years of that, I know what I personally went through with, specific individuals, and what I had to navigate through. And what it also revealed to me was their emotional abandonment or their physical abandonment. So you got to see, like, the inner child aspect was still revealing parts of other people mirroring back to me, whether I could have, which at times it wasn't perfect, where times where I would react But now with much growth in healing the emotional about the body, or healing the emotional abandonment wounds and so forth, it was just showing me like, you gotta show up for yourself no matter what no one does. You gotta coddle yourself. You gotta hold yourself. And one of my affirmations is I'm held. And for me, it's like it's a way of something that's way more bigger than me holding me, that most cannot see. You know, people reference the ancestors, people reference spirit guides, but it's something that is supporting me on the other side that most cannot comprehend. And when I think about the depths of that, I go into detail even about the mothers and fathers, and the key, just generations of people who came before you. So it's like, you know what, no one has to get this and accept this. So this inner child is also bringing awareness to the fact of when you are doing the healing, you're healing, as they say, back and forward, because you're bringing awareness to the lineage that how important it is to show up for yourself and your well-being, something that most have never seen, and you're also recovering that. So your healing is so significant with the little boy inside of you, to where, for me, the little boy, because at a time where I just assumed all was forgotten when it came to me not being supported emotionally, I had to recognize that later on in life with relationships who did not mirror that back or be supportive in that way, because I also realized that maybe they had a mother wound, or maybe they had an emotional unavailable father. Somewhere, some way, they were also trying to live out a void or fill a void of emptiness when it came to their interaction. So a lot of those karmic lessons was, a great reminder to I say see this Mother's Day or every day completely different, because when I'm resting more, that makes me show up a little more clearer. I'm prioritizing things a little different than where I used to be so bothered when I used to notice how certain relationships used to end the same. And what I didn't know then was, again, I was codependently holding on to the idea that this person had to be this for me. They had to. And again, it goes back to basic human needs, not getting certain things when you were young, the nurturance, the support, the emotional support. My grandmother doing mostly the raising and my mother not. So it's like a way of, that wasn't my mother. That wasn't even her responsibility. She wouldn't have the emotional connection as my mom would to me. So that in itself will make you question the fact of, am I deserving of living sometimes? Because the abandonment issue can bring up the fact of self-esteem, confidence, and so forth. So that's another thing that I had to rebuild through facing the emotional wound and emotional abandonment and so forth. Because again, as I learned through connections, it will bother a lot of people as you will be so persistent in healing and holding yourself. And at times I've noticed how people become angered because they don't realize like they're creating their own suffering by overdoing it. Because as you get more into healing and facing your own fears of abandonment and so forth, you also get out of that rut of being hyper independent, wanting to do everything on your own, because wanting to do everything on your own, because a part of that abandonment could create a lot of issues around being responsible very early for not only yourself, but now you took on this identity that you have to be responsible for everybody else's emotions, because you don't know how to balance that, that aspect of showing up for yourself and then other people. So that became very uncomfortable as I start to balance and structure my life more too. It starts to really bring up the codependency aspect of not just the emotional thing, because I realize the emotional things it expands to things like financially when you're dependent on people, mentally, even physically. Like it all plays out into a way of it all connects in some type of way. Now you find yourself like in situations where you didn't become more stable within yourself to go out and have the courage to interact. Because again, self-esteem, you have to have the confidence. You have to have the confidence to keep interacting with people, with the real world and so forth, because you got to get prepared for those rejections and realizing it's for your protection, or realizing it's building a part of your character. So most people are unaware that when you are and have been in some type of abandonment, whether emotionally or mentally, a part of you lose your identity in the other person's world and not build from your own space, not build from a secure space, or not build on something that can make you more secure in that emotional state, in that, mental, spiritual, and physical state. And that's again why I realized like people were so boggled down with or bothered. But I'm like, yo, I've been doing this consistently. Even when I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, why I was crying, I would say, or having these moments where certain stuff would happen. I'm like, what's going on? And I start to recognize more that this is literally preparing me for the life that I'm living now. A more stable, secure, balanced, structured, on all levels. And so what that does is that it builds it rebuilds my self-esteem. It means that my whole character changed, my whole identity around how not only I view myself, but how I view the world. Because it was already shown to me, okay, there are going to be people out there with this energy of being undeveloped, emotionally and so forth. So this is a warning on how this could play out through them. Okay, now that you know this, that shouldn't stop or hinder you, because you've seen what it has done before. You still have to progress. And so that's why I mentioned the books. Like in a 3-4 year span, some of the books are from 7 pages to 30, like 40, 30, 40s. But it was just the fact of like, for me, it was different stages in my life where I was navigating things. And I can look on every version of them and start to recognize like, like, oh man, I remember I was here. I'm so glad I stayed like confident. I'm so glad that when I looked at this part of my life to where this person showed me this person revealed this, or, during the time I was navigating something, wow. It's a reminder of why you stay consistent. And then no one knows the depths of what you had to rebuild. And that's the thing about knowing how, even the fact of what I had to go through to rebuild my self-esteem, because the little boy within me was more focused on the wounded aspect of, I got to see everybody through this lens of, they'll hurt me, they'll abandon me. And that's how some people stay unhealthily attached. And I'm telling you, I've seen it. I've been in it, so I can see it even more clearly when you're on the other side of it. It's like, whoa, you're really dealing with something and you've been hiding it. So this is how you have to stay focused and master, because if you don't, you can easily be pulled in if you don't stay the course. And that's how I realized, like, it's not an issue at all when you outgrow or realizing that your growth is, your internal growth is preparing you for doors that, some people wouldn't even assume that you would be a part of, or even sometimes even unimaginable to you. But that's where the confidence comes in, to where you realize the inner work and what you've done is not in vain, because you built your self-worth. You rebuilt your net worth and so forth. And you realize, like, wow, I had to get up out of this with this person, because it eventually becomes a liability. Because their insecurities start to show. Their insecurities start to reveal itself. You're like, dang. Now when this person comes around, or now you open to new opportunities and so forth, you just never know what that exposes in a person who has been masking so long how confident they are, or how much they really haven't done the inner work. Like, again, things reveal so much along the path. And no matter what, you still got to nurture and hold yourself, you know, in that high honor when it comes to your inner child. Like you no matter what people do, I've learned to not take it personal. One thing I know about people that's insecure or do have abandonment wounds, they take things very personal. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just the fact to where you lose sight of the mission, the vision, the purpose. And so for me, I had to remind myself, like, no, this is way more bigger than me, because there are going to be people that are going to be in need of some type of support, or even seeking something to give them maybe some reassurance, or maybe clarity or insight. And I'm grateful because, again, in a world where, in an old world narrative where, you know, they would try to make it seem like, hey, don't talk about your emotions as a man. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't talk about that. You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, I'm reinventing all of that. Because there's also men out there too who's going to be in need of things like that. Young men as well, because they're not going to see the world like our grandparents or dad or somebody else did. I start to recognize, again, a lot of men carry that mother wound energy and so forth, to where they mask themselves a lot. And I can recognize a little boy within them that's really crying out. They escape through their careers and stuff, but in reality, it's like they really don't have brotherhood. They don't, because one thing I realized, the deeper aspect and also recreating what brotherhood is that for me, I would want someone to talk to me, you know, about emotions. You want to be a safe place for yourself, but you also want others to feel safe with you as well. So that's a whole nother thing when it comes to emotional abandonment. This is a person eventually, and I'm talking about from lived experience too, that they find a safety in other people. I'm not saying other people shouldn't feel secure and safe for you when it comes to, you know, you feeling vulnerable and authentic, but in a way to where someone who is wounded, in some way they're going to end up being manipulative, because it's going to play out in a way where they can only mask themselves for so long and so forth. But again, what we have established, when you don't prioritize the emotional part or the well-being of people, you don't see people valuing having empathy for people when they go through stuff, emotional empathy, and so forth. And that's a whole nother thing too. Emotional abandonment revealed that to me about some people I know, is that they get so caught up in what they're not receiving because of the abandonment, to where they won't have empathy for you. They'll go on a defense and almost attack, because they feel they got to make it about them. They got to make it about their emotions. They got to make it about what they're not getting and how they're not getting supported. I'm telling you, I went through that shit until I realized, you know what? Wow, it hit me. You know, gradually, through the years, I was like, you know what? If I don't keep showing up for me more, and realizing like nothing's ever going to be enough for this person until they actually see they have to show up for themselves. Because even though I knew that they had a mother wound, and even though they were a woman, I had just navigated the mother wound, and I was just expressing, even though I'm a man, I could still see the energy play out to where you're telling yourself that you okay and you healed through something, but in reality, that's not how it works. And I'm not saying like I'm trying to force people to do stuff, but that's not like, it's sometimes it's the lies we tell ourselves, because we convinced ourselves like, and that's the thing about growing up and being surrounded by people who are insecure. When you realize people have been masking themselves consistently, you don't even realize you're doing it. You will keep telling yourself. That's how much people have created a false identity around confidence, a false identity around really being this person and so forth. But you know that person differently. You've seen a side of them, You've seen a side of them that nobody else has. That's the thing I'm getting at. You've seen the shadow aspect of them. You've seen the parts of them that they keep hidden. And that's one thing about physical abandonment. You know, I've seen people get like really crazy around the fact of the fear of them not being alone. That's an issue. Even the emotional abandonment. They'll find their way manipulating the person, even almost like gaslighting them, you know, when they feel like they're not holding space for them. So that was like confirmation. Somebody was like, hey, bro. But anywho, so, and I'm telling you personally from things where when I, you know, again, didn't acknowledge the importance of healing my inner child, that's how I went from relationship to relationship. I didn't recognize the fact of I was afraid to be alone, or I was afraid to really feel and acknowledge, because times where I were vulnerable with women or certain things, I would probably be taken advantage of. It wasn't always me. It was, I would be taken advantage of in settings where they would laugh, like, ha, ha, ha. Those who know, you like, oh, you a bitch. Oh, you this. This nigga talking about his feelings. Now the world has shifted, and it's shifting into the fact of the value system is going to change. Because truthfully, you want someone to care about how you feel. And one thing I've learned, even with interacting personally, having an emotional abandonment wound, navigating through it and assist other people, it's also a way of realizing the little boy and girl within them will just find ways at times to how could I say this? Be so passive aggressive too. That's another thing, towards how they really feel. So this could show up in so many different ways, where how they really feel, they never was shown very young how to express it, or it was silenced, and they were told to like keep it down. Don't talk about this. Don't do that. And again, that apart, along with having the emotional available parent, I would be in connections where, as you can see, I love to talk. I love to express myself. I've got more confidence in expressing my emotions and so forth, sitting with it with myself, and then again, connecting with people who don't have an issue with this. And that has allowed me to set a lot of more healthy boundaries, and also not be, through discernment now, not be easily swayed or manipulated. Because again, when you see your patterns, you can recognize a pattern in other people, things that they didn't want you to see. I'm telling you, when you grow up with people like that, surrounded by people who master manipulation, a person that has dealt with emotional wounds or abandonment and stuff, they can master the manipulation. Anything not to feel, they don't master it. Anything for their inner child not to feel, they numb themselves so much that they don't think it's important. I was in relationships with people who where when you want to sit down and talk about your emotions, it became almost like a battle. And this is how I realized I start winning the war. It's where I realized, like, I surrender in letting them win what they didn't recognize. Like, they wanted to make it out to be an argument, but in reality, I'm like, no, I'm just expressing my emotion. I'm telling you how I feel about this. But an emotional abandoned person will not recognize the fact of when people are not used to them holding space for that, they either shrink or play small to where they can deflect. They find a way to deflect, because anyway, in any shape or form, to talk about their emotions, they're not going to do it. So again, this is learned behavior. This is childhood development state, what you learn in childhood. This is something you learn young. And I saw this gradually happen in connections where I personally had to outgrow, because I'm going to talk through my emotions. I'm going to feel it. I've got much better, but I'm going to find a way to create a narrative. That's probably my Gemini moon, but I'm going to find a way to talk about it, express it, because I didn't have that growing up. So for me to find a balance and peace and harmony in something, that became one of the biggest fallouts for me with someone and with people, is that I was so big on communication because of what I dealt with young. Abandonment issues, people never talking about stuff. They never wanted to resolve shit. Because sometimes what you would end up happening, if you were never guided to see that these things were important, as you grow up, you will find yourself in unrequited relationships because you're not intentionally doing this to this person. You just learn these behaviors. You just learn these patterns, and the whole time they thinking like you're intentionally silent treatment or doing certain things. No one never expressing you the importance of communication. Communicate your feelings. Let someone know how you feel. This is how I felt. I'm telling you, I had to gradually do this shit later on in my 30s, bruh. I don't feel shame and guilt, but it's like I didn't know how to set boundaries. I didn't know how to express certain stuff until I gradually realized, like, even have my daughter. Because, you got to realize having a little girl is more expressive. She's more emotional. She feels. My son feels too, but it's much different. I had to work on my approach with a lot of things. But I also started to realize, like, man, this person has dealt with something or haven't dealt with something. And it becomes scary over time when they don't actually acknowledge it. Because they'll keep suppressing it or they have repressed it for so long to where sometimes they'll make you the issue, and in reality, no, it's what you're not acknowledging. It's what you have unresolved. These are unresolved emotions from your abandonment wound when it comes where your emotional abandonment. This is something unresolved, and now some people will find themselves vicariously living this out through other people. And that's how I learned gradually how things just came to a completion with a lot of people that I knew, is because the more I start seeing my inner child, I start really seeing how a lot of people were undeveloped through their stages in life. And that hindered their progression. And that's why you hear people say it's levels. It is levels, because if you're going to get to a space where you do business and it ain't gonna be about your emotions, you're gonna know how to be practical, logical, and remove the emotions out of things. That doesn't mean like you're repressing them or suppressing them. It's just sometimes you got to learn to deal with the emotions before you make the decision instead of being impulsive. That's one thing I've learned. I had to learn how to navigate. I had to learn how this doesn't take emotion right now. That's one thing I learned with individuals recently and personally, like how they will bring their emotions. Yeah, your feelings are important. Okay, let's move through this. Now let's be logical with this. And when you didn't get that young, it can be very challenging when you're dealing with men who master logic. Yeah, we still learn through women and interactions also to feel. That's a balance. But that's one thing I learned with a lot of interactions with some women that I knew, that I realized that probably had went through some painful experiences, most likely dealt with abandonment issues or emotional available parents and so forth, to where they couldn't see things logically. I will voice something, but it will stop at the fact of they made their emotions more important or priority over seeing the bigger picture that, yes, your emotions are vital. They're valuable. But again, how many of us as a child have been told that your emotions are valuable? Yes, your emotions are important, but that's illogical. But yes, I know you feel this way, but this is a decision that's still going to be made. I've had to learn to do that even with relationships where it wasn't so much of how someone made me feel through some interactions. It was so much so of how the connection through facing my inner child and healing my emotional body, or healing through things where I realized I connected with people through, as I gradually learned, from a distorted aspect of pertaining from that emotional abandonment, like from the emotional abandonment space. The stories will always be the same. I'll give you an example. Like when you talk to this person, the stories will always be the same. Like, you know, it's almost like the interactions will be similar to the same conversations of things pertaining to, you can say low vibrational shit, or just the fact of whether gossiping or talking about like, well, this is what I went through and da 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 da, rather than it being encouraged to the support to go beyond that. And how could I be supportive? And just for me, I started to realize, like, dang, am I unconsciously trauma bonding, or am I building this friendship and so forth from that space of them trying to feel, because every time I go talk to them trying to feel that space or void of that particular abandonment wound? Like, what I'm saying is, like, imagine, hold on, some connections we don't even realize in our life that we just simply have there from a space of possibly woundedness. Like, we know it's not, it serves its purpose, but we know that it has reached its peak. Like, it's outdated, it's expired. Like, again, for me, I like, and this is again the growth of the inner child, like healing. I realized, like, how I met certain people was in a space maybe years ago to where I was like, dang, these conversations are similar. Like, what the fuck? And there's nothing against them, but I realized, like, it was almost like a son looking for, which is okay, like looking for this emotional support. But there's also ways, in a healthy way, where again, I was also seeking that reciprocity in a way to where I now know that this person haven't met themselves deeper, because it says a lot when you meet someone on a level where you are, to where maybe you're feeding each other abandonment wounds that you don't even recognize until someone actually grows and goes beyond it. And that's what happened for me. I started to realize, like, wow, maybe I was some type of reflection of the father that they never had. And sometimes we build connections on that unconsciously that we don't realize from a place of woundedness. And that's okay, because you eventually grow, you expand, but you also go beyond that to where you have to leave the person where they're at, to where it gives them opportunity to grow. It gives them an opportunity to look within themselves and recognize, like, well, I see why this person made this decision. Instead of, you know, there can be times where people actually get angered because of, which reveal the abandonment wound. Think about that. They actually, the emotions around the foundation will peak. It will come up. You start to see, like, oh man. And in a way, I realized this is how I had to protect myself. Because when I didn't know then, which is engaging in sex, where you build the emotional, you know, you connect with this person emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and so forth. And so how I realized a lot of things come unrequited, whether in relationship, business, and partnership, I started to realize, like, they were more in love with the idea of who I was then, but not who I was becoming. So that's one thing about when you go within and then you start to do this healing, you start to realize, like, it's not so much of the person's inability to heal. It's just they're not making time to coddle or to show up for themselves. They'll keep making excuses, and most of the time they're trying to escape through whatever it is familiar. So that's why people, you know, will keep doing what's familiar and assuming that they make progression, but they'll keep attracting the same people through in different bodies in a way, if that makes sense. Like they'll keep attracting the same fucking energy, and eventually it'll keep ending in the same fucking result. The results will keep being the same, and they'll keep questioning why. And that's what I've had to learn. That's why I make my messages. I'm like, bro, I had to see the root cause of the mother wound to realize, damn, the mother of my kids, like, had to see the fact of how I connected with this person, the energy. I had to see also the fact of the relationships before her, because it brought more awareness to the fact of the inner child and then an actual child. So an actual child is going to mirror back everything that you cannot hide. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge and accept that. Yes. That's why I always make reference to the fact that, man, my daughter, it's a different energy with her and my son. And it's not a bad or good thing. It's just, it's a more teaching me, highlighting the abandonment wound in itself. Because she's not my mother, but she carried a motherly energy. And it's an innocence. It's an innocence in a way to how when she shows up or when she comes around, sometimes I be wondering, I'm like, why do I feel this uncomfortability? And it's not with her. It's the fact of I went through so much shit with women to where, like, she is a reminder that not just all women are not the same, but she also is a reminder that all of these women were her. And then in her growing into her adult stage, most of these women have forgot about being her. Whew. And that's the thing about the inner child I tell y'all about. Most people have forgotten that the child is still there. You were once a child before you was an adult. You just lost sight of the little girl and boy. And that's the most uncomfortable thing that an inner child, that it will bring up for you. It will bring up this shit that you can't even run from no more. Those repressed memories, those unresolved memories, emotions, all those things that you didn't want to see. And you wonder why whole time you've been in this neighborhood, this environment and so forth. It's because you don't recognize the trauma bond you have externally to people, into the neighborhood and so forth. It's because you've been trauma bonding with your inner child. Your inner child is the purest, innocent version of you. This unfiltered aspect of you who doesn't care how people see it. You're just expressing yourself. You're just being who you are. The parts of you that you don't ask people to accept. The joy, the innocence, and so forth. That was assigned to you before you came through your mother. Before you and your mama met. Before you and your mom, before your mom and dad met. And the reason why I say this is so important for me is because the more and more I start to recognize this, the more and more I give less fucks about how people view me, see me, accept me, whatever attachments they have to me in an unhealthy way eventually gets revealed. And it doesn't matter if you're a spouse, it doesn't matter if you're in a relationship with whomever, it doesn't matter even with your kids. It's going to reveal the unhealthy attachments that you didn't even realize that you created with your inner child. The little boy and girl within you that you taking along this ride the whole fucking time, and no one told you the important parts about, hey man, you know you gotta show up for yourself. Hey man, you know that shit that you think that you got past and just brushed up under the rug, you know you're still living with it, right? And as I gradually learn to navigate this, no longer repressing it through relationships and so forth, I give my inner child now that opportunity to express itself. So my focus isn't on relationships like it would be, because I realize the most important one I need to get together is with myself. Why things haven't stabilized, why things haven't been as supportive or balanced, is because in the trauma bonding aspect with the inner child, it has created that with other people where I became complacent and comfortable and settled for through self-abuse, because when you abandon yourself, it's through self-abuse, which allow others to abuse me in ways that, again, whether intentionally or unintentionally, because I didn't know my worth. Because I realized my inner child, you can't place a value on that. And also, again, for me not to be preyed on by people who are not healed or healing, I should say. Who are not realizing, who are unaware that their most important relationship and their first and last love begins with them. Your mother and father brought you in at a place of what you perceive love to be. And most of us have carried that false interpretation or idea of love, the romanticized shit that y'all call, that y'all quick to say, where people say one night stands, just get together, just do this. Some of y'all came in through the spirit of lust, through being your mama and daddy being drunk, all kind of shit. Stop it. Stop thinking that your ass don't carry that energy. Stop. Y'all got it, bro. You carry it to face it, to recognize, like, no, you're not exempt, just like me. It was evident for my mom and dad not to fucking succeed in a relationship when I know you fucking probably met, shit, who knows what type of environment. Because I had to find out later that my dad was doing fucking drugs too. And you talking about people meeting up, getting high, getting fucking for drugs. Come on, let's be real. Now somebody pregnant. Now you knew you weren't ready for that shit. You knew you weren't prepared for that shit. So we acting like we aren't living that karma out. But that's the thing where we acknowledge to where you don't have to convince yourself that, oh, I got to stay with this person, or I got to be with this person because of this or because of that. Are you recognizing the fact of, is that child, it's not even the child aspect. You lost sight of the inner child. So the karmic aspect was to remind you that through having these kids, to come back home to yourself, to recognize, like, this is how you're going to bring harmony and peace to the whole situation. To see the bigger picture. To recognize, like, most of the people that have met, when you recognize that they've been trauma bonding, they're not safe for each other's inner child. Their inner childs can't even fucking get along. I mean, some of y'all know y'all mom and dads can't even fucking get along and have fun together. Some people do. They have the luxury of that, whether they're together or not, whether it's romantic or not. But that's the beauty in it. Because that's what it comes down to, all of this, is that your inner child wants to express itself without judgment. There are people out here, I don't give a fuck if you like Comic-Cons and dress up and all this other shit, you know, what someone may call weird, someone else might appreciate. And that's one thing I gradually had to accept about myself, is that not only you can't force people to heal or you fix them, but you also cannot make them see the most authentic parts of yourself. And before you become complacent and stay in it, why would you? Because if they appreciate it, which reflects their internal value, it'll begin, they'll do it. They'll show you. And most people don't know how because of growing up, again, either dealing with some type of abandonment issues emotionally and so forth. They really don't know how. They don't know how. And a lot of real growth goes with you have to learn to have the courage, the confidence to not settle and move on. Because we're here to be experienced. We're here to experience love, be loved, and lovable. Everybody didn't grow up in environments where they were lovable. Their mothers and fathers are not lovable. Some people don't even know what that means. Some people only know that they think that they're lovable just through sex. Just through shit like that. Through money. Through material shit. But you get to know them, they're not lovable. No one like to talk about that. Because you know what lovable reveals? Do you love yourself? You ever see why somebody hates how somebody who's so magnetic get so much attention and so forth? Okay, all attention ain't good attention, but when it comes to being authentic, you realize a lot of those people who are magnetic, in a way, have become more secure and confident within themselves and more stable to where they don't have to prove that they're lovable. They embody it. And that's what a lot of our inner childs are trying to return to. We embodied love when we were children, when we came in it. No matter what our mother and fathers were doing, there was still an innocent part of us that embodied love, because we come from love source. We embody love, or we try to at least. But when you embody it, there's nothing to prove, because you start to recognize the abandonment issues within yourself. You don't abandon yourself for the love, you embody it. So that's my message. Y'all take care of yourself. Peace and blessings. Shalom.